Thank you. And that's something, of course, you do you underline in the communication, where you say that an estimated 90% of global growth is now going to come from other markets. Therefore, access to key markets crucial. That's going to be a topic of a whole debate this afternoon. If I might, I'll hold you there for a minute and just go out and see if the audience want to join in our discussion. Does anybody have either a question or, as I say, today is very much about interactive debate, so you can make a comment, a brief comment, as well as put a question. Does anybody want to weigh into the debate at this point, or would you like me to go on grilling our panel? Anybody have a comment or question at this point? Okay, they're enjoying me doing the grilling. So I just wondered, in terms of when you look at the proposals made by Business Europe and you look at those key drivers, they have their 7 policy drivers, and then they have the industrial governance, the cross-cutting issue, if you like. And the argument very strongly, and we go back to this mainstreaming question, but frankly, I have moderated many, many debates in Brussels, and people always talk about joined-up thinking. We need more joined-up thinking. We need mainstreaming. We need coordination and synergy. What for all of you, if you agree that that's very important, what for all of you is the key to doing that, whether it be European, national level? And do you think there is enough joined-up thinking between governance levels, i.e. the European level, member states, regions which play a crucial role in this area? How do we get real joined-up thinking? Do we have it, and how do we get it? Any thoughts on that, if we would? Yes, Pierre, please, first. You need this back.
Well, I think that there's a very important point, which is harmonizations of social rules, tax rules, environmental rules within Europe. Because in fact, when you look at Europe, it's a 500 million users and consumers. And we have discrepancies between the regulations within Europe. So I think a key point of success to build a strong Europe in the future and a strong industry in Europe, which can be exporting and building the future needs of humanity, is really to have a playground which is harmonized between us, between countries. There's too much discrepancy for the time being in Europe within the countries. And I think Europe is a very nice thing because we can have fences, on the highways of the future, in order that all countries can go to a same objective in terms of social rules, in terms of fiscal rules, in terms of regulations, with an idea is to simplify everything. No more bureaucracy, no more technocracy, just simplification. So we need to take the simplest rules as a reference, and then we need to execute. Because the problem we have with all our governments is you have thousands of reports, and in industry, we like to design to have an objective. Then we have a calendar when we make a decision and we execute and we go to actions. So I think this is the 2 main things that I'm waiting for Europe, is really harmonizations of the rules in order that the playground is a real playground, real market. And this has to be done. And then executions of what has been decided with a lot of simplification of everything.
Okay, Commissioner, and if you would on this thought of about how you get the joined-up thinking, because one of the points raised in your Industrial Renaissance paper and in the Business Europe recommendation is, for example, the cumulative impact of different pieces of legislation at European level, but also at the different levels. How do we address that issue? I know you're looking at it.
Yes, first of all, my opinion is Europe is not Hobbes Leviathan. It's not a monster. I am totally in favor subsidiarity. Concrete message. This 100 billion euros coming from regional funds for industrial policy, they are money for different regions. The target is reindustrialization, but every region will utilize the money for its target within the reindustrialization. In Saxonia is not the same in Alsace. In Lombardia is not the same in Extremadura. We will utilize the money for different targets, but under the reindustrialization umbrella. But this is important to have a strategy, a mainstreaming. Every sector will work in favor of European reindustrialization, but every day with subsidiarity. Subsidiarity is crucial. Also, it's important to reduce the red tape, the burden of also the burden of European bureaucracy is important to reduce. This is crucial. But it's important to have in every member state, in every region, a target to work in favor of real economy. It's possible to utilize regional money for this target. Of course, different targets under the same strategy, but different situation, different industries. In south of Spain, the industry is not the same in Germany or in Bulgaria and in Romania. But it's important to achieve a target. 20% of our GDP coming from manufacturing sector. It's possible agri-food sector, space sector, eco-construction sector, biotech sector, raw material. But it's important to push the real economy. And on bureaucracy, I think it's important. Within our proposal approved last week, there are 3 proposals in favor of small and medium-sized companies, first of all, against bureaucracy. First, 3 days and 100 euros to set up a business. 30 days to obtain a license, shorter duration, third point, of court litigation in credit recovery for companies. It's 3 proposals. In the next, we will propose these 3 points in the next month against bureaucracy in favor small and medium-sized companies.
Okay, so Commission leading the way on that. Ingo Kramer, you mentioned flexibility, labour markets, a lot of talk already this morning about education and skills. This, of course, an area where most of the power, the competence, as we like to call it in EU jargon, lies with the member states. And indeed, when you look at the Business Europe recommendations, they make specific recommendations for the European level and for the member state level. How do you think, in relation to that issue, taking it as an example, we can really get the joined up thinking we need, and how do you see the different roles of those different levels?
I hope I got your question right.
What can Europe do on this issue when most of the powers, the competences to deal with labour market reforms and so on in education are a matter, going back to what the Commissioner said, a matter for member states?
Yeah, okay. We often got the feeling in Europe that harmonization is very important to get the same labor standards and so on. But besides the harmonization, we don't feel that it's in a simple way. We get the feeling we get more bureaucracy. We get more complicated. And I think it's very important in Europe that the EU Commission tries to get the people the feeling that it's easy to work inside the EU, that it's easy to get better labor market without too complicated situations. It's easier to get an education system that the people can free move from one country to another one. But we don't have this feeling. This is perhaps a very important point.
So to focus on oiling those wheels and then let the rest happen. So Michael, in terms of the role of Europe in all of this, the role of national governments, of course, a hot issue in the UK, and let's not go there. We need a whole other day for it. But in broad terms, where do you see, in delivering on these key policy drivers, where do you see the role of Europe, and how do we get, is there a problem of joined up thinking between the different levels? And if there is, how do we cure it?
Yeah, well, clearly Europe is very complex, in a very complex situation. We have the Eurozone, we have the non-Eurozone, we have, which hasn't been raised really in any detail, significant problems about level playing fields on financial regulation coming out of the crisis, which needs resolution between the ECB, the Bank of England, and the Fed in Washington. This is a huge issue. We've had uncertainty on liquidity capital, Basel III, leverage, it continues. We'll never get the proper lending, the proper capitalization, the proper confidence. This is critical, and the UK can play a role in this because it's important within the narrow. I think it's very important we don't waste this crisis. I think it's amazing and much to be credited what's happened in Greece. Ireland, Portugal, and now in Spain, in terms of the reforms they put through, as the Prime Minister was saying, from Greece, haven't been there for decades. And we need to sort of use that to understand that when we have 50, 60% youth unemployment, democracy is not sustainable. Therefore, there has to be continued engagement between industry on the one hand and policymakers within Europe to understand this is more important than local short-term elections. It's about how we have a sustainable proposition, that moves forward for Europe in the vision that many people have had from the beginning. So I think it's just really critical that we don't get a sense that it's all over because the euro hasn't collapsed. We just have to understand that we have several years where we have to get investment, we have to get productivity, we have to get the youth back to work. Otherwise, I'm afraid we face much bigger and dire political problems, some of which are going to come out in the May elections, as we all know. So I think it's that combination of issues where we need to gather and forget some of our narrow parochial differences and think about what is fundamental to the whole system, actually.
Thank you. I'd like to come back in a moment on the question of really how our approach to these questions compares of that with others in the world and what we can learn or what not in terms of competitiveness policy. There's already been talk this morning about climate action and should we have an ambitious target if the rest of the world don't, as we did last time. How do we, in terms of the international arena, how good is the EU at supporting the competitiveness agenda? But before we come to that, I want to give you another opportunity if anybody would like to join in. And if you could please introduce yourself and please be brief. Thank you, sir.